Hello everyone, this is Marcus here, and today we're gonna look at the legacy deck I'm gonna play in the daily event in a couple of days. Unfortunately, I don't have time for that today, so we just take a look here. And this is basically the same list that Vidi won previous GP with. It's blue, white, black, good stuff deck featuring Lingering Souls. Oh yeah, actually it's more or less the same deck also that Tom Martell won the GP before that with. We have a couple of unorthodox card choices. I play Wasteland in my 3-color deck. It seems odd since it's not good casting my colored spells, but I run the massive 24 lands here, so you can use them in the early game to cripple your opponent. You can combine it with this card, and you can keep them off, for example, Liliana of the Veil. You know, if they have those, you can land a Stoneforge Mystic, and you can wasteland their Bolt, Swords to Plowshares mana. But you can also just cast your spells with it. I think this deck has two decks in one deck. You have the aggressive Stoneforge Mystic discard plan. You also have the grindy late game Dirtling with Souls and Jace. And Wasteland, it bridges between those two decks quite well. It's also good against Wasteland decks. Some people think Wasteland, you can't play this. It doesn't help you play your spells, and if they have Wasteland, you're screwed. I think it's quite the opposite. You have 24 lands, so look at it this way instead. You have 20 lands, and those can cast your spells. Wasteland, when not playing against Wasteland, you wanted to cast your spells, and if you don't want that, you can use them aggressively. You don't have to use them aggressively. So if you play against Wasteland decks, you fetch one basic perhaps, and you play your Stoneforge Mystic with Wasteland turn 2. They don't really have a good trade there. You just trade 1 for 1, and if you don't have any pressure on you, it doesn't do anything. You just play your other land. And this is also the reason why I like to play as many as 8 duels. You play it when you cast your spell, they wasteland it and think they screwed you, but you just play another one. I think this is the best plan against Wasteland. Play more duels. So that was a little bit about my mana, and I'm gonna walk the curve through you in the curve, so to speak. We have 4 discard, an even split between Thoughtseize and Inquisition. I think Inquisition is the better card of them, but if you draw too many when it starts to get bad against Batterskull, Jace, Sneak Attack, Ad Nauseam, what have you, you rather have your first Thoughtseize rather than the third Inquisition. And against some decks, the life loss really doesn't matter at all. And I think 2 in the main deck is reasonable if you play in an open field and you face burn from time to time. You don't want too many of them, but they're okay. Discarding a Goblin Guide or their only Lightning Bolt spot removal for your Mystic, even though you take 2 life, it's still worth it. I always side them out, obviously, but 2 is not horrible. It's not like it's an uncastable card against stuff like burn. If you nail a Goblin Guide, I mean you save at least 4 damage. It's not good, but it's not like you don't play it. So 4 brainstorms, obviously, and Spell Snare. I'm gonna talk to you a bit about Spell Snare. Some people like Spell Pierce main. I prefer Spell Snare. It's hard counter, and it counters most of the good cards in this meta game right now. The reason why I don't like Spell Pierce is it doesn't do anything in the late game. And this deck, it's all about the late game against the grindy decks. You trade 1 for 1, you get a little value here and there, and you win with Jace souls in the late game. So basically, Spell Pierce doesn't do anything in this late game, whereas Spell Snare and especially paired up with Snapcaster Mage, it's really good, even though it's late game. Since Stoneforge Mystic and Snapcaster Mage are good cards, you want to have Spell Snare against them. Like in this example, the Mirror. I side them out from time to time. For example, against Rug, you only take Tarmogoyf. Against Painter, you only take Painter Servant. Show and Tell doesn't have any real targets. Maybe Sideboard Defense Grid, but that's not good anyway. So it's a powerful card, but you have to keep it in mind when you sideboard. 4 Souls of Plowshares. A pretty good card. I have 1 Jit and 1 Batterskull. 1 sword in my sideboard. This is the best sword against combo, so I switch Sword of Feast and Famine against Umesawa's Jitte when I play combo, and when I play mid-range or fair decks, so to speak, I side this in as well, so I don't squire my Stoneforge Mystics with not having any left in my deck. If they play discard, counter spells, disenchant, cross and grip, I can still get there with the equipments. We have a 1-off counter spell. Force of Will is not that good right now. It's all-time low, at least on Modo. It's fair decks, it's burn, it's discard. Deathrite Shaman really turned the metagame upside down, so it's much more grindy right now. And Force of Will is not good against that strategy, but you have to use them. Some decks like Belcher combo, and from time to time even against fair decks, you want this insurance. If you keep a slow hand and they have a bad but fast hand, you can compensate this with Force of Will and Jace. They are good together, so to speak. Force of Will pitching Jace in the early game makes up for the card advantage when you land the Jace and they are not dead. Counterspell, it's in the same category. I think you want 1, 2 or 3. They're getting clunky. You need a deck that doesn't tap out to support that. But 1 counterspell is good. Sometimes you land Jace and you want to start Fate Sealing as soon as possible. But to me, I want to have this or any Force of Will and 5 mana in my hand before I start Fate Sealing. Before that, I want to brainstorm and dig for those cards, and also trade for the top deck cards of my opponent. And when you have the control of that game, you start Fate Sealing. When you have the counterspell in hand and your opponent is empty, you Fate Seal. I don't really like most people, not most, but some people play this and aggressively Fate Seal. Against Show and Tell, you want to aggressively Fate Seal, since it's a 2 card deck and you can just keep them off Show and Tell basically. But if you look at this deck, if you play this deck and you land Jace and Fate Seal, what you're gonna put down? I mean, okay, swords, they're not that good, and perhaps lands, but you have about 50-50 shot of putting it on top or bottom. And if you do put it on bottom, there's a 50% chance they draw something good. So against fair decks, you rather brainstorm with this. So that was the counter suit. Lingering Souls, counter sweet, sorry. Lingering Souls is really bad card. It's good against the bad decks, the fair decks of the metagame. It's not that powerful compared to 3 mana Show and Tell, but it does a good job in this deck. You trade 1 for 1, so you cripple your opponent, and then you land Lingering Souls. So they're forced to interact with it. You make the game state so that Lingering Souls is good. And there is no card except for Engineer Plague, the 1 mana black enchantment, Dread of Night, I think it is. Yeah, those trade 1 for 1 or 1 for even more if you have more souls. But other than that, there's no card in Legacy that's played that trades well with Lingering Souls. So if the deck doesn't care about Lingering Souls, like combo, it's a bad card. It's really, really bad. You put two dudes into play, it doesn't do anything. But against the other cards, the other decks, it does a good job of protecting Jace and having bodies for Jita. I play 4 of them. I also play 4 Jace. I think this is the best card in the deck. Like I said, it's 2 cards in one deck, and when you draw the wrong half of it, the early game in the late game and the late game in the early game, you want to have the dynamic of pitching Jace to Force of Will, but you also want to have Jace late game and brainstorm away the 3 swords you've drawn against combo, if you ever resolve Jace in that case. Yeah, it's a great card. So, a little bit about my sideboard. I have a one-off Insurance Disenchant. They clog up in multiples, but in some board states, all you need is a Disenchant to be safe from top decks like Jita, Batterskull, Choke, and also good against odd decks running Chalice of the Void, stuff like that. It's a fine card against Bug. They have perhaps some Sylvan Library, some caught off guard. Okay, it's good against Esper where it kills equipment at least. Vendilion Click, yeah, we have this card. It's the best card against Jace. You play it end of turn, you see if it's safe to play your own, or you kill their Jace with it. You can also cycle your own spells, like the one of Disenchant against in the mirror, where you just want to have a fresh card on an empty board. It's really, really solid. It puts a clock on combo. The deck has not that much pressure, otherwise you side those out. And sometimes even Stoneforge Mystic against Painter, for example, where you bring your whole sideboard. So it's good with hate cards also killing them. Same goes with Meddling Mage. I think this is the best card against Show and Tell. You don't really have that much counter spells to be safe from their top decks. You have the discard, you cripple them, you put some pressure on, but then you also need 4 or 5 turns to close out the game. If you have Batterskull or something like that. I mean, I side this in, but it's not that fast. So they have 3 or 4 turns of top decking, and if they do draw it, you have only 4 counters. So I like this. You put it on Show and Tell, and you click, and you see 3 Grizzlebrands. And with this in play, you know you're safe. Otherwise, you're not really safe. So we have some Graveyard Hate, 4. And if you want to beat Dredge, you need at least 4, I think. The deck is so fast, you're only going to see a few cards. So even if you don't aggressively mulligan for this, you need to keep a hand with Brainstorm, at least a chance to find them before you're dead. And when you do find them, you don't really win. You need Stoneforge Mystic, you need some kind of beatdown going as well. And when you do have that, you're not winning anyway, because you need to find another. Most games against Dredge comes down to pressure, disruption, and at least one Graveyard Hate. Most of the time you need 2. So Surgical, obviously good with Snapcaster Mage against most combo decks. 1, because it's free. The life doesn't matter in those matchups, and also because information is what makes you win against a good deck, especially against a good opponent. Sometimes they play like if they do have something that you have to be aware of, and with the Surgical you can just see if they're bluffing, and then you can play your pressure cards. You don't want to tap out against Painter Servant combo with 4 cards in hand. But end of turn Snapcast or Surgical and whatever really allows you to close out the game before they really draw the cards they're faking. So 4 graveyard hits, and I like a split between Spellbomb and Crypt to dodge Pithing Needle, for example. And I like 2 to split here with permanents and spells, because you want to play you dodge Cabal Therapy with those, and you dodge Ancient Grudge, stuff like that with Surgicals. So they're good in combination with each other. That was that. And we have one-off explosives. It's a removal kit here with the Perish. Some people run more targeted removal, Dark Blast, Path to Exile. Some people run the more broad Supreme Verdict. And the spot removal is not that powerful, I think. Dark Blast, sure, it's good against elves and Grim Lavamancer or what have you. But against those decks where you want Dark Blast, you also want to kill their Tarmogoyf. So I don't want my cards to be limited, killing just a few of the cards, even if they're better doing it. Like Dark Blast, it's excellent against Dark Confidant. You gladly trade your top deck card for their Dark Confidant if it ever hits play. But it's like I said, it's quite narrow. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Supreme Verdict. It pitches the Force of Will, it's uncounterable, it have everything, but it counteracts with our own game plan, that is Lingering Souls and equipments. I don't support that kind of thinking in my deck building, where you want to put Lingering Souls into play and they follow it up with a Tarmogoyf. So what you do, you flash it back, start to race, and what if they play another threat? Yeah, sure, you have to sweep, but that's not value. So most creature decks, they're green based, and Perish is one-sided Wrath of God for 3 mana, and that's as good as it gets. I mean, Goblins, Merfolk, sure, doesn't do anything there, but it's good against also the Rug Tempo deck, where the uncounterability of Supreme Verdict shines. So my plan is to play the best cards against the decks I think I'll face, rather than always have Goblins and Merfolk in mind, since nobody plays them right now. And to be fair, I don't think they're really that good decks, since they fold to so many combo decks. Yeah, not in the case of Merfolk, but I mean Goblins. Yeah, sure, it's powerful and it really wrecks this deck. So maybe I'm bitter because I've lost to it so many times, but it doesn't interact on every axis like this deck does. If you play a deck that is not combo with your own fast game plan, I think you really need some way to interact with the hand, with the board, and with the graveyard. So you're not cold to certain decks. For example, also I dislike Burn, even though I like Burn more than Goblins, because their own game plan is they're about as fast as each other, but you can win with Burn from worse board states, so to speak. You're not totally cold to humility. You can always just get there with the Burn to the face. So enough rant about fair decks. The sword, I think I talked about. Perish, yeah, explosives. Yeah, this one acts like the third Perish. If you look at it this way, you nail the 2 Deathrite Shamans, the 3 Nettled Sentinels, sometimes Tarmogoyf. It's a good card. I mean, most creatures cost 1 and 2 mana, and it costs the same to destroy a 1-drop as Perish, but you can also kill creatures of other colors. it's the catch-all against dredge. Also, you nail zombies, empty the warrens tokens, counterbalance, equipment. I usually side all my swords out against Esper Blade. I think this is the worst card in the deck, followed by Force of Will. You want to trade 1 for 1, and these cards doesn't do that. So one explosives, 1 disenchant instead of 4 swords of plowshares. They work fine to stop equipments, which sword is mainly used for killing the turn 2 mystic. And we have the spell pierce I talked about. You want this in your sideboard against decks that play a lot of spells like Storm. With the Sword of Feast and Famine going, and even some Snapcaster beats or what have you, they have to go off before you top deck your discard, you find a Force of Will, whatever, so this cripples them. Even if you counter Ponder turn 2, it's fine. So that was my deck, and hopefully I haven't upset too many of you with the rant and my limited understanding of this. I like to play my decks my way, and if people play this deck other ways, that's fine by me. I just wanted to let you know how I think before I start playing the dailies. I've done some before and been quite successful. I don't know if it's pure luck or if it's good matchups or if I played well. It's hard to say, but with you viewing, I hope to improve my game, and I hope you enjoy watching them. So until next time, see you.